It was the loneliest he's ever been. Matthew was doing his report for his law firm at 2:30 in the morning in his apartment. Even though his body was begging him for sleep, his mind couldn't allow him the rest that he needed. Matthew reached his goals of becoming an attorney, and even though it drove him to be miserable, he always thought that the rewards would be worth it. But now, Matthew is more miserable than he's ever been, despite being a recipient of those rewards that he once desired so much. As the sun began to rise, Matthew was aware that he had to get to work. The same routine that he's been doing for the past 14 years. Leave his apartment after little to no hours of sleep. Walk to the cafe in his building to order his coffee and taxi to his law firm.
Matthew, Foley Smith and Maxwell are on the line.
Thanks, Denise.
Matthew said as he steered himself into his office.
Matthew here.
Hey, Matt, how are you feeling?
Same old, same old. Another day, another dollar. Hopefully today, though, it's more than $1.
Well, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. I know we have been working for a long time for this merger, but our client decided to take his interests elsewhere.
Excuse me, what?
I know, we were quite surprised, and believe me, Matt, we have been pleading with him to not give up on our proceedings.
Well, I hope so. I just spent the last 2 weeks working on this deal with no sleep and filling my body with coffee and Adderall. And this guy just goes, "Yeah, thanks for taking precious years off your life for this merger. But I think I'm going to look for other options."
You're preaching to the choir, Matt. I legally can't force the guy to continue on if he doesn't want to.
What's he doing with the business?
He's doing some deal in India somewhere.
India?
I know.
There is billions of dollars at stake here. And that guy's instead taking it to India? Is there something in India I don't know about? What's his number?
Don't know, he changed it once he left.
Matt thought to himself. He spent too many long hours, too many miserable mornings just for this idiot to screw off to a nation on the other side of the planet.
Where did he go?
India.
Yeah, I know, but where in India?
New Delhi. Matt, you're not actually planning on going there, are you?
Why not? I'm surprised you're not already in an airplane right now.
Matt, he's done.
I'm just going to convince him to reconsider.
I feel like you should reconsider your thinking process, Matt.
I can convince him. That's my job.
I'm not talking about the guy or the job, I'm talking about you. You sound like you haven't slept in months, and when you saw each other last meeting, you looked like hell. Take a break. You got enough money to gut.
Matt hung up the phone. Matt touched down in New Delhi around 1 p.m. local time. Of course, it was extremely crowded, but he managed to wave down a taxi.
Take me to New Limit Corporation, please.
Matt didn't know if the client was there, but it was his company, so he figured it was the best place to start.
Sorry, sir, he's not here at the moment.
Matthew was frustrated at the front desk.
Well, have you seen him?
Yes, sir. He was here earlier, but he had a very important meeting to attend to.
Where is he?
I can't give that information out, sir.
Well, when will he be back?
If the meeting is important, it could take all day.
All right, then.
Matthew left the office building irritated but still determined to change the client's mind. He thought that once that he sees that he made his way all the way from Manhattan, he'll be so impressed he'll know that the merger is the best option. Matt wandered around and found a bar nearby. Matt wasn't thirsty, nor did he want to talk to any bartender. He instead just stared at the building he just exited and was willing to wait for however long until the client showed up.
You know it won't make you happy.
A voice from the back of the bar was speaking. Matt turned around. It was an old Indian man with a beard.
I'm sorry?
It won't make you happy.
What the hell are you talking about? What won't make me happy?
Whatever it is you're chasing,
What makes you think I'm chasing something?
The old man chuckled.
I never seen a man sit so aggressively before. Clearly you're a man that can't stand waiting, which means you're somebody that likes chasing.
And what is it exactly that you think I'm chasing?
That's up for you to decide. But whatever it is, you won't find it on the path you're on now.
And what makes you say that?
The man readjusted his seat.
Have you heard of string theory? It is the theory that the universe is made up of tiny strings that vibrate. And when these tiny strings vibrate, it shapes the structure of our universe. And if the universe is infinite, let's say, that doesn't only mean it is infinitely big, but also infinitely small, which would mean that the universe is inside you and me. And if we are a part of the universe, then the same fundamentals that shape the universe are the ones that shape ourselves, which is vibrations.
Okay.
And everybody's vibration are different, but sometimes you can always tell someone's vibration from the first moment you see them. Your vibration is that of a man who is trying to find something he already found a long time ago, but is so afraid to admit that what he was searching for wasn't what he wanted, that he is willing to work himself to death to distract himself from the fact that deep down he knows this isn't the path for him.
That's a cool theory, but I live in downtown Manhattan, and my guess is that you live in some hut around here.
Don't you think it's odd to insult someone by saying that they're happier in a hut than you are in Manhattan?
My happiness is none of your business.
And apparently it isn't yours either. And if it is nobody's business, not even your own, then it doesn't exist. If your relationship with your family is none of your business, then your relationship with your family doesn't exist either. Believe it or not, my friend, you are at a crossroads right now. You have been walking a path that has been rough and troublesome for you, and you are almost at your destination. But once you reach it, you will realize that it is just a door that leads into another endless pathway. If you have the desire to murder, you see the world as weapons. If you are a mathematician, you see the world in numbers. But if you see the world as a game, then you see in opportunities. Right now, my friend, you have the opportunity to find a different path,
A different path for what?
to not play the game at all.
The old man stood up from his table and left the bar. It was still nightfall, and Matt was still sitting at the table waiting for the client to arrive. The car finally arrived at the building, and out of it came the client. Matt was ready to run over to the building to get his attention and finish his goal. However, as he stood up, he remembered what the old man told him.
You are almost at your destination, but once you reach it, you will realize that it is just a door that leads into another endless pathway.
Matt knew that if he did accomplish what he came over for, the only difference is that he'll just have a bigger house. Which is fine, but Matt already had an apartment that was more luxurious than he could have hoped for. However, here he was, still sacrificing himself for just a little more. And he knows after the deal is done, he'll still be spending countless sleepless nights in stress that was making him age in dog years. Matt watched the client go back into the office building, but rather than follow after him, Matt sat back down in his chair and just stared. For the first time in his life, he questioned his purpose. He has been living life as a slave. No, he thought, not a slave, a robot, because at least a slave has a desire to be free. Matt was so caught up in his work he forgot what feelings felt like anymore, except for stress and exhaustion.
Isn't it strange
The old man appeared again.
to live your whole life from one point of view and finally looking at it from a different perspective? To a poor man, he looks at that building and sees dreams and prosperity from his current job. But those who work at that building feel the same way about it as the poor man feels about his current occupation.
The old man began walking away in the opposite direction of the building. Matt, sitting down, was now making the decision in his head. Continue his path to the building or take the opportunity that was presented to him. Matthew stood up from his chair and followed the old man.
Where are we going? Can we stop for break?
Matt was physically tired but mentally felt energetic, which is quite the opposite of what he usually feels. Him and the old man have been walking up this mountain for what seemed like hours.
By the way, I haven't gotten your name yet.
Farit,
That seems hard to remember. You know how a lot of people convert to Hinduism and change their name to something like Vernaishu or something? You should do that, but for American names. Can I call you something like Fred instead?
names are just something we use to make it easier to point people out from crowds.
You don't think names are valuable?
What makes something valuable is what we decide is valuable.
So food and water is only valuable because we value it?
Yes,
Yeah, but wouldn't people die if they stopped drinking and eating?
yes.
Okay, so isn't that bad?
Why?
Well, nobody wants to die.
Nobody knows what they want until they actually do what they want.
Okay, so the end goal here is to what? Kill myself?
Farid laughed.
Here's a quote to remember: there is no such thing as the afterlife because there is no such thing as after. Remember when you went to university and you would spend a year away from home? And eventually you would come back after the semester and see your parents again before doing another journey? Life is the journey, and death is our home. It is where we belong.
If death is our home, then why are we so afraid of it?
If everyone knew what death was, everyone would want to die. What the point of playing a game if you already know you're going to win?
So what is the purpose of life then?
Why does a parent let their child leave their home? Parents love their kids more than anything and are sad to see them go. So then why do they push them out of their lives?
To get a job?
Animals do the same thing and they don't get degrees. It's for them to experience. Be sad, happy, heartbroken, worried, excited, optimistic. It is for them to find out who they really are. Matt, your life is near perfect. You have more money than you can spend. I'm sure you've slept with a lot of beautiful women and get to experience things only very few people can experience. And yet, you're right here with me, walking up a mountain rather in Manhattan in your $12 million apartment. When you secure a $1 billion deal for your firm that you've been working on for years, you celebrate, but then you'll get bored, and thus you need to stress your life out just to feel something again. So you go out and try, make another deal, and then the cycle would just repeat itself.
So if having everything is bad, but also constantly working at something is bad, then what is the point?
Well, you weren't only looking for something to keep you occupied, but to also keep getting the feeling of elation after securing a deal, like a heroin addict that keeps sticking a needle in his arm to feel the highs again and again,
Are you saying that I can have that elated state all the time?
all the time. But it's 1,000 times better than elation.
Farid and Matthew took a break from walking and sat down on a log.
I need you to plant a seed.
What?
I need you to plant a seed, and I need you to take care of it as it grows up.
This whole thing wasn't a ruse to get me to be your gardener, was it? Because if it was, that is not cool.
It is clear to me that you have never really cared for anything more than your career. Because somewhere along your path, you decided that your career was going to fill the void in your life. No wife, no kids, no girlfriend, no friends. One has to make sacrifices to truly excel in one particular area. However, little did you know, there were more things that were being sacrificed than you originally asked for.
So is this plant supposed to give me something to care about?
It will give you an opportunity to care about something that isn't correlated with you in any facet.
Matt snickered. He knew that a plant of all things wouldn't make him more of a caring person, or whatever it was that Farid wanted from the experience. Nonetheless, Matt bent down and planted the seed.
Your job is to take care of this plant, water it, tend to it, and protect it.
Does that mean we're stopping here?
For now,
Matt sat back onto the log with Farid.
do you meditate?
No.
Do you know what meditation is?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of like relaxing.
Yes,
Seriously? Because I was just guessing.
I am sure that there are a lot of so called experts these days that dive deep into techniques on meditation, how to's, and the science behind it. You'll get big words like mindfulness, but it just complicates the practice more.
Well, I do think Einstein said something along the lines of, if you can't explain something and make it simple, you don't know what you're talking about.
Anything that seems complicated are usually answered with simplicity. Think of it like a game. The very simple and basic methods are the first level, and once you accomplish these basic and simple skills, you move on to the next level. Level 2 is more complicated than the first level. Once you accomplish that, then you move on to the third level, which of course is even more difficult than the second. Is this making sense so far?
Yes.
This then continues on until you reach the final level, the most difficult and challenging level. Once you accomplish this final level, you will receive the ultimate method to solve 99% of the problems in the world and beyond. And that final method is the simple and basic techniques at level 1 that you started with. But to truly understand their power, you have to go through the levels.
What is the simple answer then?
That is for you to decide. There is no one answer for everyone, like as there is no one meaning to life. The meaning for life is what it means to you. The meaning of life to a hungry, uncontacted tribe in the jungle is different than someone like yourself.
Well, what is your simple answer?
Be,
Bee? Like bees?
just be.
I'm confused.
The most simple answers can be the most confusing for some people, since they always are so used to making things complicated. The goal is to make complicated things simple, not making simple things complicated. The idea of being is so unusual to society because most people rather do than just be.
Doobie doobie doo. Lots of do's and bees, but what about actually solving real life problems?
Like what?
Like wars, poverty, diseases?
There is a famous story in Islam. A man said, "When I talk to God, I want to ask him, why does he let so much pain and suffering in the world? But I'm afraid he'll ask me the same question."
Are you a Muslim?
The closest thing I am to anything that has a label is an omnist. But I have my own personal religion that is custom made just for me.
What is it?
I believe that whatever one believes to be the truth is the truth. We create our own truths for ourselves.
Okay, so if I believe that the moon is made out of cheese, does that mean that the moon is all of a sudden made out of cheese?
No, but if you believe that the moon being made out of cheese makes you happy, then it will. Have you seen people having religious experience before? I had when I was younger. My friend took me to a Christian church, and him and his friends were all bawling their eyes out and hugging each other. It was a very beautiful thing to see. And let's say for a moment that God isn't real. Well, that moment certainly was. What makes us real is the emotions that we felt, and I guarantee you, most people, especially atheists, never felt anything as real as that in their lives. But how come I didn't feel it as much as they did?
Because you didn't believe in it as much as they did?
Exactly. I believe that the truth that is beyond our understanding is up to us to decide. Not us, the collective, but us as the individual.
So you believe that there is no wrong religion, even atheists?
Yes, even atheists.
So you think atheists will become nothing when they die while the rest will go to their version of heaven?
No, I believe that if atheists believe that life is meaningless, then their life is meaningless. It's not about what people believe that's important, but that they believe. It's not important that a Christian believes that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, but that He is his or hers Lord and Savior. Magic already exists, we just call it placebo. If you believe something to be anything it's not, it will become that thing. Take split personality disorder. Usually it comes from someone who has had serious trauma, so as a coping mechanism, they create fake people, and these people eventually become real people. When they switch personalities, their body type also changes. Some of them are blind, have asthma, while the original personality has none of those conditions.
Yeah, but that can just be chopped up as them being insane.
The first and most important step to the 12-step program is to admit that you have a disease that you are powerless to. Now, alcohol isn't a disease. Everyone knows that. But the 12-step program is the best process to eliminating addiction, but only if you believe that you are suffering a disease.
Yeah, but it's not a disease.
To you, it's not a disease. To them, it is. Therefore, in their world, alcoholism is no different than measles.
So you believe the world needs more religion?
It should be well known in a society that religion is one of the most important things in the world. The world is going through a mental health crisis. There is a correlation of the decline the world's happiness and the decline of religion. Those who are religious are happier, more successful, have more children, live longer, and are exceptionally nice people, which are the most important traits a human can have.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't believe in it. You can't force them to believe in it.
You're right, nothing should be forced, but it should be encouraged. take the lowest people in society, or what society considers the lowest in society: homeless, drug addicts, prisoners, etc. The number one cure to their problems is religion. I repeat, the number one cure, and there isn't a close second. Perhaps psychedelic therapy can compete. It gives you a community, true meaning, guidance, and best part, it's free. All one is required to do is believe. If society wants to fix the mental health crisis, just encourage religion.
Yeah, but what if the people don't believe?
Well, then they don't believe it. But let me give you an example. In the 1990s, there was a 14-year-old girl who was a Jehovah Witness who needed to get a blood transplant but decided not to, as it goes against her religion. She ended up dying, of course, and one can't help but think what a foolish thing that girl did. She didn't take a life saving process just because she didn't believe in it. It is no difference than someone who is depressed and a cure is offered to him or her for free, and they decide to decline simply because they don't believe in it.
Yeah, but what about the religious extremists? You bring up Islam, girls have no rights, Israelis killing Palestinians because their religion says it's their land, the Catholic Church, and the atrocities they commit. Personally, I think religion is a detriment more than a benefit.
Yes, lots of horrific atrocities have been committed in the name of religion, but that isn't the religion as much as it is the people involved. If you look at where the religion are being the most extreme, are in religious controlled states. Let's take Islam. Islam gets a lot of hate, but it is only in Islamic controlled states. Take Indonesia. Indonesia has the most Muslims in the world, and the women have rights, they aren't oppressed. There are no terrorist attacks. Israel is a country that has been committing crimes for many years, but Jews in America don't commit crimes of murder. The Catholic Church only committed their worst crimes when they were at their most powerful, but now they are peaceful.
Yeah, but what about them hating gays and non-believers?
One's relationship with their religion is between them and their religion. It is the most personal thing in the world. Someone's religion, nothing in religious texts aren't supposed to be taking literally or from another's perspective, only your own. If you have someone telling you what it means, they just want power using the religion. The problem with the religious controlled states is that it only tells you the scriptures from their perspective and, of course, can add whatever they want to it. It's not that religion hijacked the state, it's that the state hijacked the religion. Any truly religious person would disassociate themselves from any positions of power. A Christian doesn't have to hate gays or non believers if they don't want to, especially if it means that you're not a Christian, Muslim, or whatever. It's ridiculous.
Then who should be in power then? I mean, look at the political landscape. In the political world, the left and right are hating each other. There are wars all over the world, and poverty is a real thing even in the first world countries.
In a utopian world, what do you see?
People being happy.
Yeah, but why?
Well, I don't know. A capitalist like myself would say, set a system that forces or encourages everyone to work hard, and the harder you work, the more you'll able to achieve those benefits. And a socialist would probably want the government to pay for it all.
Couldn't an individual achieve these areas without the government?
Yes, maybe an individual, but not a collective group of people.
Why not?
Because a collective group of people need to be told what to do.
So perhaps we need to turn people from groups into individuals?
No, we can't do that because more innovation is usually built on teamwork.
So according to you, we need to have groups that encourages individuals to think for themselves.
I guess so. Why? What are you getting at?
Well, you said something interesting before about the individuals in groups don't think for themselves as individuals, but only what the group thinks. Like the group has a mind of its own, and that's bad because it gets rid of rational thinking and can turn the group extreme, such as political groups.
Are you suggesting governments shouldn't have any parties?
I don't think there should be any governments at all.
That's ridiculous. If there's no governments, the world would turn into chaos.
The world would turn into chaos because the lack of spirit, not because of lack of government. We need government because the individual is lost without a group or guidance, because the individual is lost deep down. If the world goes through a spiritual revolution, a government wouldn't be necessary.
So, according to you, society would need a spiritual revolution in order to live in a world where the government doesn't need to exist?
Yes, we have an individual problem, not a group problem. I'm sure you have heard of the quote, bad things happen when good men decide to do nothing. Good men do nothing because they are not men, they are members. They can't think for themselves. They think what the group thinks. A man or a woman become the purest form of themselves when they fill the void that they think the group will fill.
So, the spiritual revolution comes first?
No, democracy comes first.
We live in a democracy.
No, we don't.
Okay, well, I don't know about India, but in America and the West, we live in a democracy.
No, you don't. No one does.
What are you talking about?
Did the American citizens vote to invade Iraq? Patriot Act? PrEP Act? Any wars? Sanctions? Spending? Did they vote on any of those things?
No.
Okay, then it's not a democracy.
Okay, wait. We don't vote on policy, but we vote on the parties and the president.
And how different has it been?
Well, in some areas, it might be.
It's an illusion of democracy, an illusion of control. The government needs the people to believe that they need them, or else the world will turn into chaos.
Because it will.
It will, unless the individual is spiritually fulfilled. The world may get out of control if there is no government, but the world has gotten out of control when there is too much government. You can try to program a living being into the way that you want it to be, but eventually they'll just go back to what their soul desires. And for humans is to be free,
Free to do what?
whatever it wants. But if the individual is spiritually fulfilled, then there is no need for government to control, because they wouldn't need control. The world would finally have control of themselves.
Yeah, but what about businesses and the economy?
What the world needs is just the basic needs for their survival. Matthew, do you really need your phone, your car, your TV, the Yankees?
Well, I probably need my car
For what?
to travel.
To where?
I don't know, maybe my job, for example.
Right? So you slave yourself for money just to buy the basic needs. Except maybe they're a little nicer.
So you believe that a utopian world is where we just live like hunter-gatherers?
Yes,
Wait, what? Humans since that time has become smarter, lived longer, more advanced?
more depressed, more unhealthy, more enslaved by their own mind. Matthew, when we look at a life of a human, they start off as babies and then grow to be adults, and we believe that the older they get, the wiser they are. But perhaps it's the opposite. Maybe we begin life as enlightened beings, and then as we age, we slowly steer away from that. We might be smarter than children, but they are happier, way happier. Would you rather be smart or would you rather be happy? Picasso said, the first part of life is learning to become an adult. The second half is learning to be a child. Society is no different. Perhaps when we were living in the jungle with no clothes, we were more of a utopia than we are now. Humans spent 99% of their lives in nature. We don't belong in buildings, we belong here. The world has gone through many revolutions: agriculture revolution, scientific revolution, industrial revolution. All had a significant impact on the world. But the most important revolution is coming, and it's the spiritual revolution, and that is the one that will bring us to utopia, or just simply back here.
Just like the game you described earlier? With the complicated levels and the solution that solves every problem are the simple ones that we started with.
Farweet smiled.
Yes,
Both men stood up and continued walking up the mountain.
How long until we reach the top?
is that where you want to go?
I don't know, I'm just following you, but my feet are hurting a bit from walking so much. I can't imagine what yours feel like.
Mine doesn't hurt.
How could your feet not hurt? We've been walking for I don't know how long. And you're wearing sandals, and I got dress shoes on.
My feet don't hurt because I choose to accept the pain rather than fight it. Have you ever taken a cold shower or a cold bath or sat in a sweat lodge?
Not often. I do sometimes go to a steam room.
When you experience these discomforts, your body immediately wants to leave the discomfort, but if you only accept it and surrender to the experience, then the pain is only a feeling.
Yeah, but that's like saying if someone gets their leg blown off and you go, oh, well, hey, that's only a leg.
Well, because it is only a leg.
Yeah, but that's really traumatizing.
Well, is trauma really as bad as your mind makes it to be?
You don't think trauma's a big deal?
What are big deals or tragedies or only what we decide them to be? We live so much in our own head that we sometimes mix it up with the reality around us.
So a person losing a son is only sad if we make it be?
Yes, of course, one should grieve. However, tragedy can often be a great thing. Think of a man who has a mediocre job, a wife that he doesn't love but gets along with, and a couple of friends. Let's say his base level for happiness is a 6 out of 10. And then one day he goes to the doctor and is told that there is a good chance that he may have stage 3 or 4 cancer. He would be miserable. His life is suddenly turned upside down. Now he's at 1 or 2 out of 10. But then he gets a call from the doctor, and the doctor tells him that he's completely cancer free. Well, now he's at a 9 or maybe even a 10. He's so overwhelmed with joy. He may even start crying. But what has changed? He still has the same job. He still has the same wife. All that has changed is that he went through something tragic. Think of it as an arrow. The further you pull it back, the farther it goes forward.
Matthew and Farwheat come to a waterfall.
This water comes from the glaciers from the top of the mountains.
Farwheat strips down to his undergarments and sits in the stream of water.
Come,
That water's freezing.
just come.
Matthew reluctantly takes off his clothes and sits in the water beside Farwheat. He was freezing. He wanted nothing more than to flee.
Surrender yourself to the water.
I'm trying.
That's the problem, is that you're trying. Don't try, just let go.
Matthew continued but was struggling. He was clenching his whole body, the exact opposite of what Farwheat wanted, but he didn't care.
For someone to control their mind, they have.
You know what? Fuck this!
Matthew jumped out of the water.
What the hell are you making me do this for? What are you trying to do? Give me hypothermia?
Matthew started putting his clothes back on.
Jesus. I followed you halfway up a mountain in my work clothes, and for what? To hear your voodoo nonsense.
Farwheat silently stared at Matthew as if he wasn't saying anything at all.
I'm heading back into the city to do what I actually came here to do, and then screwing off back to America.
Matthew marched away. He was very upset. He couldn't tell if he was upset at himself for not following through with the task, or if he actually thought that little of Farwheat's teachings. He was so emotional that he didn't know nor care. All he wanted to do was head back to the city, convince the client to rejoin, get his paycheck, and take the first plane back to New York. Despite being so upset, his feet was hurting to a point where he couldn't ignore it. He decided to rest on the log that he and Farwheat were on not too long ago. As he was sitting on the log, he looked over and saw his plant. It was dying. He just planted it barely 24 hours ago, and it's already dying. Matthew started looking for some water. He saw a puddle nearby and cupped his hands to distribute the water from the puddle to the plant, but there was nothing he could do to save it. All of a sudden, Matthew started to cry. He can't remember the last time he cried, but it certainly wasn't over a plan of all things. He felt this overwhelming wave of sadness and grief. Everything that he was fighting inside of him since his childhood was now pouring out. It was a stupid plan of all things that made him let go for the first time. Matthew was now bawling. His expensive shirt and suit was covered in dirt and puddle water. But he didn't care. As a matter of fact, the image of his attire made him so sick, he took his expensive shoes and suit and threw them in the forest.
This is what I wasted my fucking life for?
As soon as the rage and sadness passed, Matthew felt another feeling he's never felt, like the world was off his shoulders, like a burden has disappeared. He felt liberation, freedom. Everything felt so silly to him that he now began to laugh hysterically. His sides were hurting by how much he was laughing. Oh, how joyous he felt. So much joy. He forgot he's allowed to feel this way. Matthew went from crying tears of happiness to tears of laughter to tears of joy. He remained sitting by his dead plant and just stared into the sunset. All of a sudden, it was dawn. Matthew didn't realize it, but he was sitting down for almost 6 hours, and to him it only felt like 6 minutes. He slowly got to his feet and headed back up towards the mountain. When Matthew arrived back at the waterfall, Farwheat was still bathing in the stream, sitting in a full lotus position. Matthew walked into the stream and sat once again beside Farwheat, and did what he just did before. He let go and surrendered to the experience. His body can tell that the water was extremely cold, but Matthew wasn't. He finally decided to stop fighting the cold and just accept it. He felt as though he and the cold were one. Like he was the cold, like he was the moment. He was attached to everything. Suddenly, the sun was rising. Matthew felt as though he just got into the water, but he's been in for at least 5 hours. Matthew turned to Farwheat.
Why has time moved faster all of a sudden?
When you live in the space between your thoughts, time doesn't exist. Have you ever driven on the road for a long period of time and next thing you know, you are at your location? Or when you are doing something you love for, let's say, an hour, it goes by fast, and when you do something you hate for the same duration of time, it goes by slow. This is why happy people live longer. Time moves slower for them.
I know this might seem like a shocker, but I am once again very confused.
Farwheat chuckled.
Let's say a man lives in this state of mind all the time and another woman does not. If the man lives 10 years, but it only feels like 5, and whereas the women who lives 10 years, but it really felt like 15. Who has lived longer?
Well, they both lived 10 years.
Time is an illusion. The fabric of time is only determined in our mind. Your 10 years may feel like 15 and mind may only feel like 2. Therefore, in the same matter of time, you lived 15 years while I only lived 2.
So everything is an illusion, even time, and that our minds determines reality.
Matthew thought back when he was a kid playing hockey. There were games where he would be so good. Every time he was on the ice, something happened. He made blind passes that were perfect. He predicted plays before they even happened. He felt like a god. Maybe he was a god at that moment. It felt as though he wasn't predicting the plays, or he knew where his teammates were despite not seeing them, but that he created the plays. He placed his teammates in those spots. Maybe Matthew can be the god of his own life, like he was during those games as a kid. And every one of those games Matthew played always felt way shorter than it was when he played good, and felt way longer when he played bad. Farwheat stood up and walked out of the water.
Where are you going?
We have one more thing to do.
Matthew got up from the stream and followed Farwheat further up the mountain.
We're almost at the peak.
I guess I had a sort of breakthrough, huh?
It was always with you, Matthew. You just had to believe in it. That's why it felt so liberating, because you were finally feeling what you were supposed to feel.
It was always with me. I just never knew it.
Remember when I said earlier that perhaps kids are more enlightened than adults? Because they contain what's most important. One of these reasons is that they consider all possibilities. One of the things that separate humans from any other species on earth is our consciousness, our ability to think for ourselves. You see that spider?
Farwheat was pointing at a spider making a web.
Spiders are programmed to make spider webs in a very specific way, but when you give spiders drugs, they make their webs in a completely different way. Some don't make webs at all, which completely goes against what they are programmed to do.
So kids should just do drugs? Is that what you're saying?
No, but like the spider on drugs, for the first time he is seeing the world in a different perspective and is experimenting in new designs. When you're a child, you consider all possibilities.
Are you a believer in the stone ape theory?
I'm a believer in those who go to places where no one has been before.
You know, I do remember when I was a kid in middle school and one of the girls asked the teacher if we could all be fish, and the whole class laughed at her for making such a stupid remark.
That girl is a genius. She's a genius because she's asking questions that nobody else asks.
Yeah, but what discoveries could she make from that remark?
She's training her brain to enter a world that has never been encountered. Once her brain gets used to encountering these different worlds, she will then change our world today.
Sometimes when I do listen to songs, I catch myself thinking, how do they come up with this?
Because they see the world in a different perspective. It's the creative that changed the world, not the smart. As a matter of fact, the creative has more in common with the ridiculous than they do with the intelligent. Because the ridiculous and genius both think of things that no average person thinks of. Have you ever heard the phrase, it's so stupid, it's brilliant?
So all we have to do is think of something that nobody else has thought, and we would be training our minds to being creative.
Yes, like imagine a world that, let's say,
Farwheat thought for a moment.
how about in restaurants, instead of waiters using trays, they had to use giant pumpkins?
Matthew laughed.
What? Okay, sure. I guess it would be a lot more difficult. It would be way heavier. It would be hard to balance cups on it. They probably would have to have a pumpkin patch nearby to carry the food.
What if they had pumpkins on the menu and they had to carry the pumpkin on the pumpkin?
Matthew started laughing even harder.
That is so stupid.
It's not stupid, it's creative. Come on, keep going. How about the government passed a law that everyone had to eat a slice of watermelon every time they talked?
Are you fasting or something? What's your obsession with food?
Okay, fine. How about instead of having names, we had noises? So every person had noises instead of names. What would that be like?
It would be annoying. Like, if someone's name was like an air horn sound, that would be brutal. Like, dude, definitely change it.
Or what if someone had a full song that was really good, like a ringtone?
You're like an entire Nirvana album. Saying their name would take like 45 minutes. By the time you're done, you would forget why you wanted to talk to them in the first place.
Matthew was having so much fun. He felt so silly and ridiculous. He felt like a kid.
You're allowed to think like this, Matt? What's considered stupid or ridiculous is what the most people considered stupid and ridiculous. But most people aren't happy, aren't creative, aren't healthy, and bored.
Farwheat and Matt came across a cave.
It seems like there is no other way to the top.
Yes, there is.
You're kidding. You want to go through this cave?
No, I want you to go through the cave.
What? So it just so happens I now have to lead the way at the exact point we have to go through the cave.
I'm not going in with you.
Wow, that's really convenient for you.
It's because I've already been through this cave many years ago, around your age. I was just like you, Matthew, hard worker, trading my time, money, and freedom for money that I would never spend.
Oh, really? And did you drop all that money when you entered this cave and now I have to get it for you?
Matthew, you thought you came to India to secure a client for your job. But the truth is, you came to India for something that your soul was yearning for. I'm sure you had many clients drop out, but why, out of all clients, was it the one that lived in India where you decided to drop everything to go to some undesired country halfway across the planet? Deep down inside, you're looking for something.
What am I looking for?
That's up to you. But what as it has always been, Matthew? What you want the most is hidden in the place you least want to look.
Matthew looked into the cave. There could be tigers, jaguars, or some poisonous snakes. There is no pathway up this mountain, meaning that almost nobody ever comes up here. Matthew ducked his head and crawled into the cave. It was so dark, you couldn't see a foot in front of you. Eventually, Matthew hit a wall. Obviously, this isn't the right direction, he thought. He tried to move around, but with the darkness surrounding him, he didn't know what to do. Instead, he just sat there. He heard noises in the cave. Matthew was beginning to panic, but he remembered what Farwheat told him in the water. Just surrender to the experience. Matthew sat up straight, closed his eyes, and surrendered himself to the experience. He was scared to death. and every inch of his body wanted to leave the cave, but he stopped fighting and accepted the circumstance. Matthew had his eyes closed, then suddenly light started to emerge in his vision. Matthew was letting go into the experience in his head, but the more he tried to surrender, the more it felt like his heart was going to explode. He kept trying to surrender, but his chest hurt too much to the point where he was going to have a heart attack. Then Matthew had enough. He finally decided to surrender complete and accept his death in this unknown cave. Once Matthew gave in completely, light exploded in his mind and absorbed every bit of Matthew. No words in any language could describe the beauty and nirvana that he felt. He was everything, and everything was him. He was home. He was where he belonged. He was experiencing death. He was death. He was God. And it was the most beautiful, liberating feeling Matthew has ever had, or any other living being has ever had. And then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. Matthew came back to in the dark cave with his face soaked in the tears that he was shedding. Although Matthew couldn't see anything, he had a sense of where to go. He crawled his way deeper in the cave, with no fear, no worry, no stress, just completely a part of everything around him. He then found a sliver of light and continued in that direction. Matthew found himself climbing out of the back end of the cave, and at the top of the mountain. He looked into the distance as the sun was setting. Matthew took a deep breath and smiled.